Be sure to check out Al's new book, Clues Can Light the Way, a discovery of clues for the greatest puzzle of all, the purpose of life and beyond. Link in the description.
You know, a lot of times when people go to a religious person or a pastor or whatever, and they say, look at all this terrible stuff that's happening in my life. Look at all these horrible things that happen in this world. How can there be a loving God that allows this to happen? And then the stock answer is, God has a plan. But man cannot understand what this plan is.
Oh, God.
Because God's plan will ultimately be good.
Oh,
So is this what
that's
you're
like predestined.
So is your thing about my life had these things all happen for a purpose? Is that God's plan?
No, I don't think so.
What is it then?
I don't believe that predestiny exists. I don't believe that God makes a plan for you that you must follow or should follow or through your life.
Okay.
Not at all. And I don't think that the plan is necessarily one that I know about in advance.
You seem to be implying that because of these guardian angels, and there seems to be a rhyme or reason to all these strange things that happen in your life. So to me that implies that there is a plan. Now the question is, whose plan is it?
I will give you a very good answer. Because I've thought about that a lot, I really have. And it wasn't just once or twice, it was off and on many times. And make sure I come back to this point I'm making, because I did experience a meeting with a woman that was a medium, and she told me things that would come true in my life, and they did. And when they did, they were so profound and unquestionable, exactly as she predicted them. It started to make me feel like what she was saying had some evidence. Again, not proof, but some pretty strong evidence. And I thought, because she said, you have 2 guardian angels, and she didn't know how weird I was my first portion of my life, well, the 35 years roughly before I met her. And she said, boy, have you been putting these guys to work? Well, she said guys or whatever. But putting my spiritual guardian angels to work, because they have been watching over me and making sure I survive somehow. To me, at that point, it was like, But when she proved to me a couple of things she said, it at least planted some seeds.
Right. What did she say?
So this goes back then to your question about, did I really feel there was a plan for me? No, I didn't know there was. I never thought much about it.
What did the medium say that was so convincing?
Well, it was at a point in my career where I just joined a company. They made me manager of the environmental group, which was like 2 or 3 people. It wasn't a big company yet. And we were going to go down in hydrolab on the ocean floor and live for weeks at a time and do experiments of oil on benthic bottom dwelling communities to understand why sinking of oil is a bad thing in an oil spill. So she said, look, when you go down for your hydrolab, please just know that I'm afraid shortly after that, your company's going to dissolve. It's just not going to be around. And I'm like, what? Wait a minute. They're thriving. They're doing well. And I've got a great position. They're giving me a good salary. I was excited. I'm going to hydrolab. I'm going to live underwater and blah, blah, blah. And I just met a new girlfriend, and she's really, and she'd like interrupt and say, oh, by the way, the other point too is, you and your girlfriend, I heard you talking about her once. You seem to be pretty much getting in love with her. And this was between marriages, so it was like a 3-year period in there. And I was dating and found this girl. She said, well, that's not going to work out either. That's going to be over pretty quickly too. And I'm like, oh, come on. So I go to hydrolab. To make a long story short, it's over, and I come up and I call my boss and say, what a great thing we had. He interrupts and says, by the way, don't rush back. Stay there on the beach in the Bahamas where it was happening and just enjoy it because the company is no more. And I'm like, oh, wow, she was right. How can that be? She predicted that. And then I get back, and within a week, my girlfriend says she met another guy and she liked him more than she liked me, and that was the end of it.
Therefore, our lives are predestined, and we're just following a script.
No, I can't answer how she could know these things. That's a whole different topic. That doesn't mean it's predestined. Remember how time and space don't make much sense on the other side.
Right.
She can tap into apparently that dimension because she could know when something was going on. I can't explain how she would do it. Now, keep in mind, as I say here, there's no proof of any of this, okay? There's a lot of evidence to suggest it's, a lot of it's true, and my life is an example of some more evidence, but without feeling that it's proof, I have a strong feeling about this, that when we die, and by the way, this is supported by some events that people have reported that have had near-death experiences. They report what they've seen and heard. Some of them come close to this. I feel like spirits gather together, and I think spirits that know each other. And I believe that we do, as suggested in many books, is that we reincarnate within our families many times. And I think that the spirits, maybe my mom and dad, maybe my brother who's passed on, maybe Chris, my son, I think, and other spirits, we sit around in a group and we have a meeting. Okay. And we talk about, what did I learn in my past life? The last one, because I think there were many. And we kind of all have access to this, what my dad said. Every single thought, word, and deed of your life is available to you. And I think it would be to the other spirits. Mm-hmm. And not with judgment for the stupid-ass things that I've done in my life, some of which I'm ashamed of.
So you're judging them, but nobody else needs to.
Nobody else is, no, but I'm looking at them, and I think that they could look at it, and without judgment, they would say, okay, could have done something different here. But I think this group sits around and thinks about, if it's determined that it would be beneficial for your spirit to go back and to live another life, maybe on a different planet, maybe in a different plane, maybe back on Earth, maybe with the same family. Whatever the group kind of puts together and says, you know, this time, let's have you work on opportunities where you need to have more patience, where maybe you need to be more sensitive to people who are different than you. Mm. And here's where we're getting to my answer. We won't decide as a group on a plan that is your destiny, no. But we are going to put you in a situation where opportunities will evolve for you to learn the lessons we think you still need work on. Okay. Now that's just me thinking about something that feels right. Okay. It may not be anywhere close to what happens on the other side, I don't know. But I like the idea of something like that, because then I could come back and say, there isn't predestiny, I have control, I have forks in the road, I have choices, I can control things. Most importantly, I can control how I react to them. Okay. Because I've always felt that happiness, if you will, is a little corny, but I think happiness is a choice. In the middle of situations that are just horrible, I'm learning how to be in control of my reaction and my way I deal with it. Okay. Like, not necessarily happiness, but I can choose to stop and think about it, be kind to myself, and so on. So that would determine, in a way, a possible group of paths that I could take on which I could learn the lessons that the team thought I needed to learn and work on.
Your tribe, maybe you think of it like that, your tribe or your family.
And that feels good because, you know, that really helps me feel so good when I wake up and I feel kind of crappy, maybe even physically, especially when I had that head thing going on. Mm-hmm. There were days when I didn't care if I went on and lived or not. And I would try to, through that period, say, this too will change. I'll likely live through this somehow, and things will get better. And maybe the doctors will discover what it is, and they'll help me find a solution, which they did. Today I'm semi-normal. I take a lot of meds for the problem that evolved, but I'm okay. I can function fairly well. I think I'm still okay. Who knows? When you start to develop some of these senior type conditions, you know, I hate to even use the word, I don't want to. But maybe I'm still sane enough articulate.
You're definitely eloquent enough. Demonstrated by what's going on today.
But I feel like I can't be hurt. And isn't that a wonderful feeling?
I can't be hurt.
I can't be hurt. My physical body can be hurt,
Uh-huh.
like it was when I went through that thing with my head,
Right.
and some other physical times in my life.
Right.
And like when you brought up before, that one time that I was so depressed when I hit the lowest part
Oh
of my
yeah,
life.
we need to talk about that because we didn't talk about it on camera.
Oh, we could do that. This maybe
Yeah.
is a good time to shift into that. Through those times, I'm learning how to deal with it.
Yeah.
I went to it. You know how I got there? I was so sick. I had just taken the job with the company that went under, by the way. And so this is before that. I
Yeah.
just moved down from Santa Barbara to Santa Monica. And I really needed something to give me confidence and hope in the future. When I left the two children, I left them behind because I felt that she deserved to have as much support as she could, and I apparently couldn't give it to her to be happy in life.
Okay.
I like to say that I failed to be for her what she needed.
Okay.
And so I left, but in so doing and leaving the two children alone, that put me into depression because I knew how they cried every weekend when I drive those 100 miles up, see them, drive the 100 miles back. Every weekend that I could, I would be there. And for a while, it was every weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that it was affecting them. That together with I got really sick. I don't know what it was, like a flu-like thing. And for about 3 or 4 days, I didn't go to work. And it was a new job. I was worried about it. And I went into a state of depression. And I was in that apartment where all I had was a lawn chair and a thin mat to sleep on. That's all I took away from the marriage. Not the car, not the house, not the kids, not the money, nothing. I just was so relieved to get away.
So it was a complete clean slate.
I'm gone.
Yeah.
And I made sure she was all right. Gave her half of my salary for 9 years and a whole bunch of other stuff.
Yeah.
Made sure she was okay. But I went into this depression and I laid down one night on that mat. And I remember looking up and saying, I wish I could do it, but I won't do it on camera.
You can't. I'll just bleep it all out.
No, let me just say that I used every gross swear word that I could possibly use. And some of them were so degrading, so bad that I won't even say them. I haven't said them for years.
So you were
bad.
saying all these horrible things to the Lord God Almighty.
I was
You
accusing
were
him.
taking his name in vain, like with a vengeance.
I mean, I was saying, like, look, my life's falling apart. I'm sick as can be. I don't want to live. Death can't be that bad. And if you existed, you'd do something about this. You'd take care of me. And then I'd go into a string of swear words and accuse him of all this stuff. And I was sweating and I wore myself out from just hollering and screaming at him. I thought, boy, I hope the neighbors, I thought this long after the event, I hope the neighbors knew that.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if the God's hearing this, but as long as the neighbors don't, I'm
I
fine.
must have been wondering who was in that room because
Yeah.
they were in trouble.
Okay.
And so then I'm lying there on the mat, and my final word was, all right. I remember going something like that and saying, that's it. I'm done. You don't exist. And if you do, then God, you better do something that proves it. And I'm going to give you just a few seconds to prove it, and that's it. I'm done. I'm out. I don't want life. I don't want you. And then I said, that's it. End. Put my head back. And honest to God, the best way I could handle it was, or explain it was, my feet started to shake like crazy. And next thing I knew, my legs started shaking. I'm already at the point now, okay. You know, I'm like getting really worried, like, what is this? Is this the sign? And then it started going up into my chest, and I remember my arms flailing, and I'm like, God, and this is crazy. And all of a sudden, it was like a bolt of energy beyond description came flowing through my feet, up through my body, out through the top of my head. And I remember it felt like it was a golden light, just whoosh. It's like it blew the top right off of my head.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all I remember. I passed out.
Yeah.
Woke up the next morning. And I was like, I didn't remember what went on.
Mm-hmm.
I really didn't remember. And I got up. And the strangest thing was I went and I got dressed. You know, I hadn't been at work for a long time. The main thing was I looked in the mirror and I said, holy crap, you look like shit. I hadn't shaved. So I showered and cleaned up, shaved. I found myself putting on my suit and coat, tie. It looked so pretty cool. And I felt good. And I'm thinking, man, whatever I had, I remembered I was sick. It was gradually coming back. Yeah, man, I've been sick for days. What's going on? I felt good. I don't know, go with the flow. And I remember just going out and going down to my little bug. I had a little VW bug. It was really old. It could barely run, but it did the 100-mile trip every weekend. And I got in my little bug and I started driving and got over to a big parking lot. I remember I parked, got out, and I walked over. For some reason, I don't know, I was just guiding myself. I letting myself flow. And next thing I know, I'm standing in front of this row of buildings, and one of them had a little sign out in front, something about welcome or something. And I walked over, I looked in, and there was a church service going on, and everybody was in there. It was huge. I bet there had to be several hundred people in there, in a big, big room, and it looked packed. It looked like every seat was filled. And I walked in, and that, in hindsight, blows my mind. I wouldn't do that normally. And not only did I do that, but I walked down the aisle all the way to the front of the church. And again, in hindsight, I go, what was I thinking? And as I got to the front of the church, I looked up and there was a woman speaking behind a pulpit. And she looked so peaceful. Mm-hmm. She watched me from the back of the church. I looked up a couple of times and I could see that she was, following me. And I get all the way down, and she's just off to the right a little bit. And I look down in the front pew, and there's one empty seat.
And your two guardian angels are saying,
Maybe sit there. I don't know. But I walked over, took the empty seat. And she went on for another, 10, 15 minutes. And she looked at me almost 90% of the time through the rest of that sermon. And it was precisely what I needed to hear. And I started to come out of it at remembering the night before then, how I had challenged God. Oh my God, how could I say those things? And I'm sitting there in church, and this woman's telling me God has infinite patience with each of us. And God loves us no matter what we say or do. And I start to cry, and I'm like, oh God, I couldn't believe it. So anyway,
it finally hit home.
This gets me now. And I'll tell you, I sat there until I could barely stand up when she was done. And she came down immediately and gave me a hug. And she said something about, would you like to come and sit down and talk for a bit? I said, oh yeah. And so I went and we sat down, and it was like she knew that I was in trouble emotionally. So we talked, and she invited me back, which I did. I went there many times. And she gave me unconditional love. And it really set me straight. Made life a lot easier.
Yeah.
See, I was telling you.